Right now, the big thing in my life is my Montessori teacher training. I want to tell you a little bit about what's going on with that, which is fun. And then at the end, I'll also share some tips that I've learned. We've been doing observations, going to classes, Montessori schools. All this week, we're sitting in one class, and all next week, we're sitting in a second one. And there's only one or two of us observing in each class. One of the things that's really interesting is seeing how the kids interact when you don't intervene, because a lot of the time what we're used to is just constantly interacting with a kid, and we don't spend that much time just watching them and observing who they are in comparison with the amount of time that we spend directing them. So it's really interesting to be in these classrooms where we're required to just sit. We don't say anything. We don't stand up except when absolutely necessary because you're just watching. So I've seen some funny things this week. In a Montessori classroom, you've got mixed ages. And so these kids look like they're about 2.5 or 3. I could be wrong, but they're very tiny. You've also got up to like 5-year-olds. You've got a span of about 3 years. And the reason they do that is it really encourages responsibility for the older ones. Because if you have, all 4-year-olds, then nobody's going to be like, hey, I know what's going on, let me show you. But when you have 5-year-olds that have had more lessons than the 2-year-olds or 3-year-olds, then they look and they see, oh, this kid needs my help, and they go and help them, and it actually instills this sense of responsibility and helpfulness and community in them. It's really interesting to watch. I actually watched one girl that was older and would be interrupted about every 3 minutes by a little boy. Whenever he needed help, he would come to her and she would stop what she was doing and help him roll up a mat or open a box or whatever he wanted. But eventually the teacher saw that it was becoming a little overdone, kind of taking her away from her own work, so the teacher stepped in. And so there's these little tiny kids, Ryan and Lisa, and Ryan and Lisa are having a conflict. He hits her in the face, and then the teacher sees what's going on and talks to him about using your words, not your, hitting. The older kids help, and Cody is clearly really concerned for tiny little Lisa. And he reaches over and puts an arm around her, and then he reaches forward and touches her face, and he says, Lisa, I love you. I love you, Lisa. And he's just totally just comforting her. They exhibit these traits that are kind of funny. To me, it struck me as something you would see in a romantic movie where the guy touches the face. It's just really humorous. It's also interesting watching the kids, the things they focus on. Because I was watching Ryan again. He's very charismatic. He comes and sits down at a desk in front of me, and he has a round basket with him, and he empties the basket, puts everything on the table, and I'm not really paying attention at this point, and all of a sudden I hear this yelling. We look up, and people start to sort of pay attention, and he's going, oval, 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 and he is holding up the basket, and which is round, and he's saying this is oval, and that's one of the lessons that they get is all the shapes, and they use different 3-dimensional objects to learn the shapes, like cylinder, sphere, cube, evidently oval, and he takes it, he kind of stretches it, and he's like circle, so he was really observing it. And then he stops and puts everything in the basket and just puts the basket away, and that was the end. It was interesting to see him really connecting and referencing something that he had learned at an earlier time. And so yesterday and today we were supposed to choose one child each day to watch the entire day and just observe and record what they were doing. And Tuesday morning I chose a kid named Steven because he had kind of annoyed me on Monday. And so I thought maybe if I watch him and study him, I'll understand why he's doing these frustrating things, that seemed to me to be misbehaving. So I decided to watch him, and what do you know, I did understand him a lot better at the end of that. Before he had only kind of caught my attention when he was misbehaving, but this time I got to see his patterns, the way he likes to circle the class after every activity. And then today I got to watch another little girl named Madeline, and she was completely different from him. That was my goal, was I want to pick somebody different from him. Madeline, it turns out, is kind of a perfectionist. Everything she does it by the book, exactly as the teacher has demonstrated, and she'll redo things 5 times until she gets them precise, and she spends a lot of time lining up everything on the edges. But so, time for some tips about working with little kids, especially 3 to 6, because before they're 6, they have an absorbent mind, which means that whatever they see, they just take it in, right? When they're older, you can say to a 7-year-old okay, don't do that, and they'll understand. Or you can just explain to them kind of what you're doing, and they'll do it. But before they're 6, they don't work quite like that. And so these are things to remember when working with 3 to 6-year-olds. Okay, 1, kids have an inner teacher driving them toward anything that helps them develop. So for instance, like you see a kid like crawling and learning to walk and stuff, and he wants to go like up and down those stairs, right? He wants to so bad, and it's because that's what he needs to do to get good at that, you know? They want to, you know, like a really small child, he's making lots of sounds because that helps him learn how to form words and talk. So if there's any possible way that they can do an activity that you're doing, you know, safely, then show them how and let them try. But you have to show them how first, specifically. There's a certain way to do that. Okay, so the way to show them, you got to remember that young kids don't understand negative instructions. It's like saying, don't think about cotton candy. What are you thinking about? You're thinking about cotton candy, okay? Like that's how it works with a little kid. So one thing to remember is you show and mention only the behaviors that you want them to repeat. So for instance, you don't say, okay, you know, like when you're blowing your nose, don't do this, you know? you only show them blowing it into the Kleenex, right? Otherwise, they're, you know, I mean, they stick their fingers in their nose anyway, but you get what I'm saying. So you don't demonstrate the wrong behaviors when you're trying to explain them what to do. And when you show them something, second tip, talk as little as possible. So for instance, let's say I'm showing a 4-year-old how to open this bottle of Dasani water. So what I would do is I would say, you know, like, Matt, I'm going to show you how to open this bottle of water. Now I'm going to show you how to close this bottle of water. Now it's your turn. Go ahead and try. So, okay, the parts to that are you want to make your movements like really kind of exaggerated and specific and slow. You want to have a little space between each one so that they can understand. And then you want to let them go ahead and try it right away so they can, because kids learn by having movements. So that's important. Finally, okay, dealing with praise and encouragement. You know, I used to err on the side of encouragement, which everybody thinks is wonderful or whatever, but you don't want to, oh, I can't think of that word, condition. You don't want to condition your child to be dependent upon praise for whatever they do. Okay, so what a lot of people do is they go, oh my goodness, this picture is so beautiful, I love it, and then you like throw it in the back seat of your car and it ends up in a crumpled mess for the next 3 weeks, right? That teaches them that what do you do with things that are beautiful? You know, you don't treat them with value, right? Okay, so a different approach is when a child shows you something like that, there's 3 A's. Affirm, ask, and appreciate. So if a kid runs up to you and he says, look, I wrote my name on this, I colored this picture, you go, you affirm. You say, yes, you did, I see that. Second, you ask them a question about it. You say, oh, you know, like, what colors are these? Or something like that, you know? Or, you know, if they say, oh, look, I built this, you say, oh, you know, how many pieces are there? How many blocks are there in that? Or something. You ask them a question, they can talk about it. Thirdly, you appreciate. You say, thank you for showing me. You don't say, oh my goodness, that's so wonderful. You just say, oh, thank you for showing me. And then you go on, you know. In this way, you're, you know, helping them just have a personal pride in it instead of you constantly telling them that it's beautiful and them depending on that. If they ask specifically, like, do you like it, you know, if you don't like it, don't say you do. You don't want to teach your children to be insincere, right? So, you know, find something in it that you like. Say, I really like this purple. That's a very nice purple. Or, you know, something. Find some aspect. You don't have to tell them it's horrible, but just, you know, you don't have to gush all over it is the point. So, those are your tips for today. It was great sharing with you guys. I hope you enjoyed it.